This is gonna be fun. We just got the full set spoiled from Spiritforged, and I'm gonna be going one by one from Fury, from the red cards, to see what kind of impression will I have after reading those cards. Now, bear in mind, I never played with them, so I might be very wrong. This might be actually very funny. The scale I'm gonna be using is gonna be from 1 to 6 stars. 1 star is trash. We're not using those cards. 2 stars is niche. Niche can be a card like, for example, a tribal card, like a mech, that's going to be used in a mech deck, but otherwise would be not used at all. And even in that mech deck, is just there because it has to be. 3 stars, okay-ish cards, which are like on rate, but not really exciting to play because they don't really fit your deck, like per se. 4 stars are gonna be cards that are just decent. They are on rate or have good effect and they fit the deck, and they are just not feeling that they have any downsides that are like big enough to not play them. Awesome, which is 5 stars, are just cards that are just fantastic. They're just good cards all around, and they fit the deck and they do what they are saying on the card, essentially. Now 6 stars is gonna be meta defining cards. They force your opponents to know that this is an option that can be played because it's such a powerful card. For example, Thousand Tail Watcher. Everyone knows that card, everyone has to play around it, or at least make sure that they are not being like, you know, unanswered. Against the odds, it's the first card. It's 2 mana, reaction, give a friendly unit at a battlefield +2 might this turn for each enemy unit there. Now this would be great against Victor, but otherwise you are not guaranteed to get like a very good rate. 2 for 4, so 2 enemy units, is pretty decent. Like when you compare it, for example, when you're attacking with a cleave, it's 1 mana for 3, which is very good rate, but 2 mana for 4 is also not terrible. The thing is though, how often would that happen? And you have to remember that you don't have that many slots for reactions in your deck, so this has to be taking space of something else. It also only works at a battlefield, so cannot help like a unit in base when it's being targeted by a spell or something. So this is a niche card that maybe will play when the metagame will change, or like Victor, for example, takes over and is suddenly very popular, then I would see this card in a sideboard. Armed Assailant is a 6 mana, 1 power, 6 might, accelerate, and weapon master. Now this is a card that would essentially be filling a budget deck if you don't have better cards in like epic and rares, so I'm giving it 1 star. But at the same time, I would not be surprised if for some reason like a Jax deck plays this because it has weapon master and accelerate, but I'm gonna be risking it here, giving it 1 star that is not gonna see any play. Next card is gonna be Blood Rush for 1 mana, action, repeat for 1, give a unit assault 2. Now the obvious comparison is gonna be Cleave. Cleave is for 1 mana, gives assault 3, otherwise it's an exactly the same card. So Blood Rush just has modality but a worse floor, right? For 1 mana gives you 1 less assault, which can be a very big deal. The +3 is actually a big breakpoint, so I would say that on the base level, Blood Rush is just straight up worse by much more than just number 1 on the assault, but also has a potential to go up to +4, so the modality makes it a little bit more flexible. The problem is that in most cases you still would use this for 1 unless you're just like very inefficient with your mana, right? So I would say that the Blood Rush is gonna be a niche card, but can also fit, for example, in decks that want to target their own units because they also have some effects. So it's gonna be a niche card. In some decks it will just straight up replace Cleave if there will be some synergy there, but it's a playable card. Now Bushwhack is 2 mana, 1 power, can be hidden, friendly units enter ready this turn, play a gear token exhausted. Now I'll be honest with you, I a little bit struggle with understanding what exactly you want to do with the Bushwhack. Like you want to play this as a hidden, but if you want to use it in an opponent's turn, then it doesn't like really change what your unit is going to be doing, because it doesn't matter if they're tapped or not when someone is attacking you. This would make sense, for example, if you play a Rengar that I'm going to be discussing later, because you are playing a unit during your attack and that unit then will enter ready so it can exit the battlefield if they win. So there's some synergy there, but it's giga expensive. So I'm risking it here. Maybe I'm missing some obvious synergy that you can point out in the comments. But for me, this is a trash card, and I would love to hear from you guys if Bushwhack is for some reason very good and I'm just missed it. Detonate, 1 mana, 1 power, kill a gear, its controller draws 2. Niche card, right? It's just like very inexpensive way to destroy a gear, which is great if you play against very, very expensive gears. obvious here would be Dazzling Aurora. Destroying a Dazzling Aurora for 1 mana sounds very good. The drawing 2 probably doesn't really matter that much because you're gaining so much tempo because you're not just utilizing a 5 mana spell to destroy all the gears. The problem is, of course, that it destroys only 1 gear. The power cost is not really a problem if you're playing Kai'Sa, of course, well, right? And there's also a small modality here, or like flexibility, that you can use this on your own gear to draw 2 cards, for example, on like a gold token. So it's a niche card, can be a sideboard card. It's definitely playable. It just depends on the meta game if it's gonna be better to use like a thermal beam, or is detonate gonna be more useful in your sideboard against specific decks in the meta. Eager Drake Hound for 3 resources, 1 power, 3 might, enters ready. Now I feel like this card is just bad. The 3 drops in this game are very hard to like fit the game because of the way the resources work. So this is essentially a 1 drop if you go second, but you don't want to play it as a 1 drop because of the power cost. And then you'd rather have like a, for example, the same color has a 2 drop, the rear guard that costs 2 for 2 might and has accelerate built in, which is essentially just 1 less might, but at least it can be played on the as a 1 drop if you go first. Now this one just doesn't have this flexibility, so this is gonna be, in my opinion, just an unplayable card unless there's gonna be some dragon tribes in the future, but even there I don't think it's a good choice. Gem Jammer is a 2 resources 2 might mech. When you play me, give a unit ganking this turn. Now, I'll be very honest with you, this plays in Rumble, of course, because it's a mech, so it's a niche card already, but it's a niche card also for other red decks because ganking is surprisingly powerful. This can be utilized as a 1-drop, and it's more about like the playstyle of a player, I would say, because this card can be actually decent in even some Kai'Sa current builds. You just have to replace one of the 2 drops that you have in your deck, which is a case like maybe you would favor this Poro instead of one of your deflect Poros, for example. So to have that possibility of a ganking, like a surprise ganking, because you can give this ganking to any unit this turn on the battlefield. So this is a surprisingly useful card, but in very niche scenarios. And another 3 drop that just is bad, 3 resources for 3 might with a built-in weapon master. Now again, if you play turn 1 a gear and you follow it up with a Sentinel Adept, that means that you're ineffective on your resources because you're keeping 1 open, right? And if you go first, then why on earth would like to play Sentinel Adept first? Because then you don't utilize the Weapon Master. So unfortunately, this is just bad. Now, Serrated Dirk, it's an equipment for 1 resource, it has of course equip for 1 power, and it gives Assault 2. Now, it's very cheap, and that is the big upside. That's why I'm giving it 2 stars, because the problem with the might, with 0 might equipment is that it doesn't help you survive on the battlefield after you take that battlefield. So this card is definitely more playable with units that can go back from a battlefield after winning a fight. Like for example, Darius Trifarian can start the fight with being ready. He moves into a battlefield during the fight, gets untapped and then goes back, for example, and then that Assault 2 is very nicely utilized, but that's a big setup as well. With Lucian, this can also be utilized pretty well because it's very cheap, so it buffs your Lucians or either deals damage. So this can be niche card, it can be pretty decent, but it all depends how can you build like your falling back from the battlefields. So with River Road, this is also pretty decent as well. So I'm giving it 2 stars. It's not fantastic, but it can have its niche utilization. This is such a weird card because you read it and you're like, wow, this is great. It obviously fits Rek'Sai because it's 3 resources, 3 might, and it costs 1 if it gets played from anywhere other than your hand. But basically, when you start thinking about it, this card only wants to be played from anywhere in your hand. So if you ever draw it, you just feel like an idiot. So I have problems with the 3 drops, as I explained before. And again, it's the same thing. At least if you're on the draw and you drop it turn 1, it doesn't feel bad, but still, like, there would be so many other choices. So like in Rek'Sai, you will play it probably, but it will get replaced in the future in Rek'Sai because I don't feel like this is such a powerful card in the first place. Now this card I like very much. Angle Shoot, I'm rating at 2, so niche. It's a reaction for 2 resources, choose a unit and an equipment with the same controller. Attach that equipment to that unit or detach the equipment from that unit. Draw 1. It's a cantrip. That's already great. Like, you can just use it for 2 mana, draw 1 if you don't have anything to do with it. But at the same time, it's a reaction that can completely fuck over your opponent if he's attacking with an equipment attached. Now, the problem is, of course, that requires an opponent that does that. So it's an obvious sideboard card that can be very powerful, and the cantrip itself, it just makes it viable instantly. So I like this card, but again, it's a very niche sideboard card. Battering Ram, for 5 resources, 5 might, I cost 1 less for each card you've played this turn to a minimum of 1. Now, let's get it out of the way. This counts only played cards. Playing a token doesn't count, okay? Playing a hidden card, as in hiding it, doesn't count as a card. Your runes are also not playing a card because they don't count as cards. So there's gonna be a lot of, like, I would say this, when people are not really accustomed to card games, they're gonna misread this card very heavily. At the same time, I don't think it's a great card. Like, this would be beneficial a lot if you play 0 mana cards, like for example seals, but at the same time you're deramping yourself, so you have to float mana, and it's just like, okay, when would I like to play this card? 3 resources for 5 might? That sounds good. I have to play 2 other cards, so maybe this works with, like, for example, Stupefies. I play 2 Stupefies in 1 turn, and then I can play Battering Ram on top of that. But otherwise, I'm just sitting there with a 5-drop that just doesn't do anything. So I would rather have a 5-drop that has a potential to do something. Like, why would not like to play just a Draven, for example, that just possibly gets to like 7 might, right? Or more. So Battering Ram is just not a great card. Maybe in the future, when there will be some more synergy with like drawing a lot of cards and like playing a lot of cheap cards, maybe then it gets its moment to shine. But right now it's a niche card that I probably will not see a lot of play. Blast Corps Cadet, 2-drop with 2 might. You may pay 1 resource and a power as an additional cost to play me. When you play me, if you paid the additional cost, deal 2 damage to a unit at a battlefield. Now, if you go first, you're not playing that with the effect, so it's just a blank 2-drop. If you go second, you're not gonna play this anyway, because why on earth would you know, deramp yourself? And also it also only targets at a battlefield. So yeah, not great, right? The only synergy I could see this is like if you're playing a Nezreal deck and you just need more cards to target players to essentially draw with your legend power, but even there it's very niche and it's probably getting replaced very soon. Now, first when I read this card, Minotaur Reckoner, for 5 resources, 5 might, units can move to base, I was like, oh, wait, then we might be onto something here. But then I realized quickly, wait, this also stops my units from moving back to base. And when I read that, I was like, you know what? I can't think of a red deck right now that would like to hold more than actually just attack and retreat. So yeah, not the best card. Maybe in some future, maybe. But right now, this is not really playable that much. Now we have an over-the-rate 4-drop with 5 might, but the downside of this is play me only to a battlefield you conquered this turn. Why on earth would you want to play this, which limits your flexibility so much? Like, if you are not conquering, you cannot play a card in your hand. That sounds like a terrible idea. So yeah, this is unplayable. Recurve Bow is for 2 resources. Equip is of course 1 power. When I attack or defend, deal 2 to an enemy unit here. Now, it doesn't give you any might, and that is a big problem. Also, there's a problem with its breakpoint. Dealing 2 damage is vastly different from dealing 3, and because of that, I feel like Recurve Bow is just not going to be played at all, because you're going to have much better equipment that is going to be fitting way more situations in most of the cases. Sudden Storm is 3 resources, hidden card, action, deal 2 damage to a unit at a battlefield. If it's attacking, deal 4 damage to it instead. Obviously, we could compare it to Voidseeker because it's the same resources. Voidseeker also deals 4 damage, but it doesn't require a unit to attack, and it also cantrips your card because it draws 1. Sudden Storm doesn't have that, and the only thing that it has as an upside is the hidden value, right? So you can play it as a tempo card by sacrificing your power. Remember, you cannot really tap your Kaisa to cover the hidden cost, because that doesn't qualify as playing a spell. Now, the problem with that is that your opponent then is playing around the hidden card and they have to attack into that. And if they are not attacking, then you cannot really use this card essentially for anything substantial. So if they clean up your board, then you just lose this for no value. I feel like it's gonna be hard to justify having a slot for this card in the deck, when in most cases Void Seeker is gonna probably do a lot of the same, but without the upside of costing just 1 power, right? So this is a more tempo card, but at the same time it's very hard to utilize properly. So in my eyes, it's just bad. Void Hatchling, so for Rek'Sai, of course. 2 resources, 2 might, so on rate. If you would reveal cards from a deck, look at the top card first, you may recycle it, then reveal those cards. Now, this is just trash. If you're gonna play it, it's because it's Void, but like, it's just, man, it just doesn't have really good effect. Like, you're gonna play something else instead. Even in a Rek'Sai deck, unless you really need the Void keyword, which is not currently even the case, you would just play so many other 2-drops that are just straight up better. In metagame, the deflecting power is just so much better than this anyway. Now, this card is 4 resources, assembly rig gear, and then after you play it, you have to pay 1 more resource, 1 power, recycle a unit from your trash, a unit, not any card, a unit, and then place a 3 power mech token to your base. First question I would like to ask you when you evaluate cards like this is like, how many times you have to use it, and what is the overall cost to then get on rate. And even if you use it twice, you pay 6 resources and 2 power to get 6 might. That doesn't sound great. Then you have 7 resources, 3 power to get 9 might. That also doesn't sound great. So if using it 3 times doesn't sound great, then it's not a good card. Our first 6 stars is gonna be Draven. This guy is nuts. Like, holy shit. 4 resources for 4 might, already on rate. Doesn't require you to play power, right? So it can be just dropped on turn 2 if you go first. And then after that, this guy is just unbelievable. When I win a combat, play a gold gear token exhausted. So it allows you to essentially build up your mana by just winning and gaining points, which is phenomenal. It also works on both attack and defense, right? So he just creates gold gear tokens all the time. It's worth defending him. And when I attack or defend, you may pay 1 power that you can use with the gold, right? If you do, give me +2 might this turn. It's incredible. 4 resources, 6 might, and you just pay power because it just fuels itself, is phenomenal. This card is bonkers good. It is definitely meta defining because people will have to play around it. Void Seeker is looking very good against this guy, so they're probably gonna be even more often used in other red decks. And I feel like, yeah, this guy is he's gonna be so expensive. If the print run is not much bigger than the first expansion, this guy is gonna be very expensive. Maybe not as expensive as, for example, the Watcher, but probably a little bit more expensive than currently Darius Trifarian. Here we go, some good cards. Ferris Forerunner, a 6-drop with 6 might and 1 power cost. Death Knell, play 2 3 might mechs tokens to your base. Now, compare this to the gear that we just talked about. The gear was costing 4, and then you would have to use it 2 turns and also play more power. This guy just costs you 6 resources and 1 power, and then when it dies, it just gives you the next 6 might for 3. Unbelievable level of might. Like, this guy is really good. It doesn't have to be played in any mech decks, but it obviously has a synergy there. So this is just a good card that you might consider in almost any red deck. Now, I don't feel like it deserves 6 stars because it doesn't have like a very powerful effect early in the game, or like in the late game also doesn't have an instant impact. It just delivers a lot of value, but it is very good. And yeah, that's it. Next card is gonna be Longsword. 2 resources, 1 power for playing it. It has quick draw. This has reaction. When you play it, attach it to a unit you control. So then you have to pay. You don't have to pay the equip cost, only later on. So this gets +2 might. That's it. It's very simple card, but I feel like it deserves the 3 stars because it is possible to play it as a reaction, but then this reaction stays on the board, and then you can equip it to other creatures. Like, the more I think about it, the better the card gets, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's actually gonna be pretty common to play this card in red decks that can utilize like that want to be a little bit more on the value side than like explosion and tempo side, right? So longsword seems okay. Now I don't think it's like giga playable because of the power cost, but it's still pretty decent. This is gonna be a very interesting card. Piercing Light costs 2 mana, 1 power. Has an effect, deal 2 damage to a unit at a battlefield, then deal 2 damage to up to 1 other unit. That doesn't have to be on a battlefield. It has repeat, so you can essentially deal like 4 damage and 4 damage, right? So the obvious comparison would be Piercing Light is kind of like a worse Falling Star because the breakpoint is worse at a base level, because 2 and 3 damage, there's a big difference here. But once you start thinking about it more, and I spoke with this about this card with Alan, he pointed out some really good setups that instantly changed my mind about this card, because I was like, yeah, why would I want to play this over Falling Star? But then it just makes sense. For example, on 9 resources, you can play a Watcher, then Piercing Light, right? You play without Accelerate, so the Watcher just gives -3 might to the entire board, and then Piercing Light is able to, for example, destroy 2 units, because it's gonna destroy something at a battlefield and something else for no deramping, because it will not cost you power, so you only paid for the Watcher, so you're at 8 instead of 7, if it would be the case with a Falling Star. So next turn, you're gonna be up to 10 and play, for example, a Time Warp. So the setups are just much better with Piercing Light because of the deramping costing less. And even if you want to play for more damage, then you have that option. So flexibility here makes up for the lack of initial power on the floor. And I think because of that, the card is awesome. Now, will it be meta defining? I don't want to give it 6 stars, but I'm very close to. But the card is just very good. Very good because of the flexibility, very good because it also looks cool, but it just feels like a good card that just will fit so many battlefields, and you have the option of choosing so many different outcomes of it. So, big fan of this card. I'm actually surprised that this is not like a signature spell for Lucian, because it would just fit. But yeah, it's gonna be an expensive card for sure as well. Rel is 4 might for 4 resources, so on rate. She is a tank, which is an upside. When I attack, you may play an equipment with energy cost no more than 2, ignoring its cost, and attach it to me. So you don't have to pay power for equipping it, and it has to be played from hand. So you need to for this combo to matter, you have to get it in your hand, right? So is this card very good? Not really, but is it okay? It is. It's like an okay card. You might play it if you're like lacking maybe some better options in your 4-drop department, but it's requiring you to play equipment in your deck. The tank keyword though is like very underrated, but the card is just okay-ish. That's essentially... This is like a very good example of a 3-star card. This is gonna be our second 6-star card, and it's not really hard to break down why. 3 resources, 1 power, 3 might on a base level. It can be a reaction. It has assault too, and it can be played to a battlefield you're attacking. Whenever you attack, if you're playing red and whenever you attack and you have 3 mana open, your opponents have to think, oh my god, that's +5. That is crazy. That is just, that is so much might. It's just incredible. You're just bluffing so much potentially like game-breaking might addition from hand, and it's a unit. Remember, this guy going in probably will not die when you play him in many situations. So you're left with this guy still being there, and if it doesn't get removed easily when you attacked and conquered, then he goes back to base and then goes back to attack for 5. He is phenomenal. It's meta defining for sure, specific also because he's a reaction. Like, he's also reverse Shen, right? Shen, when you think about it, Shen is a fantastic card, but Shen is a reactionary card in a pure sense of it, like you're reacting to what your opponent is doing. Rengar here is a proactive card because it showcases like potential lethal damage while the opponent is attacking. So I feel like Rengar, because of that, has way more flexibility and is just phenomenal card. So yeah, expect this gonna be like costing you a lot of cash as well if you're buying singles. All right, now we have Rumble, 4-drop, 4 might on raid. It's a mech, obviously, and he is a champion unit for Rumble. If you play Rumble, you are definitely playing this guy as your chosen champion. Your mechs each have assault, and when I concur, you may recycle another friendly unit to play a mech from your trash. Reduce its energy cost by the might of the unit you recycled. He's a great example of a 4-star unit. He is on rate. He gives an effect that is niche to some degree in a specific deck, and so he is much better in the mech deck, and you're not playing him outside of a mech deck, so that's why it's not a 5-star, but it's good in the mech decks, right? So he's just good. He has upsides for the cost, which is on rate, so essentially just a good card. What is also important about Rumble's effect is that it allows you to play a unit to his battlefield after you conquer it to essentially fortify the location, which can have a very positive outcome for a potential mech deck. So the effect is actually meaningful, and just remember that assault stops working once you conquer, so you're not gonna have that plus reduction here because of the assault. Dunebreaker is a 7-drop with 1 power for 7 might. If you have 2 or fewer cards in your hand, I enter ready. When I hold, draw 2. Now, I feel like this card is actually more made for Jinx than any other deck, which is kind of funny when you think about it, because I feel like with Rek'Sai, the obvious choice would be, yeah, this is for Rek'Sai, but the thing is, like, I perceive Rek'Sai as a deck that will actually have a lot of cards in the hand because she will try to play cards from the deck, right, instead of from the hand. So you're not gonna have the first effect almost never, ever. But in a Jinx deck with a discard deck, I feel like this card will actually have that effect a lot, and once it has, then this card actually becomes pretty decent. So I would say it's an okay-ish card, and I would be very interested to see if Jinx becomes maybe a little bit better than she is right now, because then this card would be pretty significant upgrade to Jinx. Now we have our first Lucian. This is the red one. 3 resources for 2 might. Assault 1. When I attack, deal damage equal to my assault and enemy unit here. The funny thing is, like, the orange Lucian is 3 resources, 3 might, has a weapon master, and it gets untapped whenever you conquer. So he's like, he might be better because he just untaps and he has the built-in way of getting back from battlefields. While this guy over here, the red one, even though he has a very big potential when it comes to just destroying creatures on the board, because there's an obvious synergy with the legend of Lucian itself, because every equipment gives you assault. So if you get 1 equipment, then you get 2 damage just before the combat starts, right? So you have like a very big potential there when it comes to just destroying units. But then he is very low on HP, right? And he doesn't have a guaranteed way to go to base unless you use the signature spell. So it's very, very awkward to keep him alive very often. And because of that, I'm giving him 3 stars. I didn't build yet a Lucian, so I don't know even if I would use this one or the other one as a champion unit, but probably I'm actually not certain yet. But the other Lucian will work in other like decks with other combinations of colors, while this guy, I feel like it's only gonna be utilized in the Lucian deck. So yeah, I feel like because of that, he's also more niche than anything else. So I'm giving him 3 stars. Maybe I'm very wrong about this one, and I'll have to revisit this at some point in the future, but for now, he's not really the best. Now, I'm a big fan of Rek'Sai. I don't know, it's such a fun card. This might be just personal bias. I feel like the Rek'Sai deck is probably not going to be very good, but I would like to challenge you a little bit. One of my next videos is going to be a Rek'Sai deck, and in that Rek'Sai deck, I feel like it has to be something that I'm going to want to try, which is always going second, because this card, when you are on the draw, you just drop it turn 1. 3 resources for 3 might on rate, but you are guaranteed to have it because it's your chosen champion. And then it has assault 1, so on your second turn it attacks a battlefield for 4, and you can play, because of that, it triggers the Rek'Sai legend, which allows you maybe to play another unit from the deck that also will have accelerate. You're gonna have to pay power, but if that's your second turn with 5 resources, then you can play a 4-drop that will attack the second battlefield. Let's say that you, from the top of the deck, I know it's not going to happen often, but you discover a Draven from the top of the deck with the Rek'Sai on turn 2 after you after you conquered, right? And that's guaranteed. Like, no opponents will most likely stop you from conquering a battlefield with the Rek'Sai here. So you're gonna be able to play the Draven, accelerate it, and get the other battlefield, and then also generate gold. That is such a blowout. It's incredible. So the potential is there. And I feel like chosen champion units that can be played when you're on the draw instantly improve the consistency so much that there has to be something there when the card is like on rate. And this one is even over the rate because of the assault and the potential upside. So yeah, I love this card. It's really phenomenal in my opinion, and maybe I'm very, very, very wrong, but I really hope I'm not, because this is such a fun card. Skyfall of Arayon, I think. 3 resources. Equip for 1 resource and 1 power, so a little bit more. My hold effects are also concur effects and vice versa. +2 might. Very niche card. Let's just say from this set, from the same color, Dunebreaker would be like a synergy when, for example, when you concur, you draw 2 instead of just when you hold, draw 2. Obviously, that's very powerful, but how often you have creatures that have a hold effect or like a conquer effect, and how often you hold, actually. If you have a conquer effect, how often you hold? If you have a hold effect, how often you concur with the units. So I think this is a very, very, very niche card. You're not going to have a lot of cards that have an effect for that in the first place. So how would you justify playing this like 3 times in your deck to make sure this is worthwhile? Like Kaisa, for example, the unit would be drawing cards when she holds. Would you pay 4 resources and power for that effect? And also 2 might, of course, right? On that Kaisa, is that worth it? It stays on the board, right? So the Skyfall can be reused on a different unit, but then does the effect have to anything more than just might, because the other card also has an effect that conquers and hold? There's so many questions here, so it really depends on the build. There might be some potential in this card, but for now it's very, very, very niche. Let me know in the comments if you enjoyed this type of videos. I'm gonna keep making them if that's gonna be the case. Expect a different color very, very soon on the channel. Thank you for watching, and bye bye.